Hi, everyone. I'm Gold Derby News and Features Editor Ray Richmond, and I'm here today with Craig Henighan, the Oscar nominated supervising sound editor and re recording mixer on the four-part Netflix World War II limited series, All the Light We Cannot See, that's based on the Pulitzer Prize winning novel from Anthony Doerr. So, Craig, let's jump right in here and talk about the primary challenges you faced supervising the sound for the series. First off, was it done mostly on location or in post?
Mostly in post. As a supervising sound editor and a re-recording mixer, my job mostly takes place from beginning of post onwards through, and we see it all the way through to the final mix and final delivery. There is a little bit of work that I do early on for the guys. We'll do certain scenes, or I'll read the script. And interestingly enough, in this one, uh, Sean asked me to build some soundscape ideas that they would use during their first table reads. So even before, like when they were in pre-production, so I ended up just sort of from reading the script, I just sort of culled together some ideas and sent them like 2 and 3 minute MP3s of like, wartime soundscapes, planes, explosions, guns, and stuff like that. And so Sean used that sort of as a table during the table read to sort of get them into get the actors into the vibe. Sean's a big fan of playing music on set, sound, anything to sort of like, conjure up imagination ideas and stuff like that for their actors. So, but the majority, I gotta say 95% of the job is sort of in post-production when we get into picture editing and then we get into sound, music, composing, all that kind of stuff is all happening sort of in the third quarter, so to speak.
And you work in close concert with the music people too, always.
Yeah, yep, absolutely. James Newton Howard did an amazing score, and Dan DePrima, our main music editor, that's been with us and Sean and the gang for a while. Dean Zimmerman, our picture editor, is sort of our fearless leader in the sort of post side of things. So if you think about it as sort of Sean, Dean, and then sound, myself, Rand Geiger, and other producers, another part of the post production process pretty heavily. And so yeah, we're all interchanging ideas. I'm getting sounds and stuff into the Avid over to Dean as soon as possible. They like to build out the track as quick as they can. Sean and Dean, they move incredibly quickly during their editorial phase. And so everybody has to be sort of going. So you need to have the sounds, you need to have ideas and all that kind of stuff really ready to go. And this is being a World War II thing. It's a lot of fun for sound designers like myself. It's like it's a rich tapestry of wartime, mechanical stuff, and obviously planes and weaponry. And it's interesting that this project, a lot of the bombing and a lot of the planes is all off screen. So a lot of the heavy lifting for sound design had to take place of like, how do you create this world where you're not necessarily seeing all the bombing all the time and all the off-screen sort of chaos, to sort of like basically make an ambience and make a bed for the whole story to sort of sit in. So that was sort of one of the main goals first out of the gate, was try to figure out how to make the environment at St. Malo sort of feel during the day versus feeling the bombing at night and the air raid sirens and just the general wartime nature.
But how great for you, also, Craig, as a sound person, that basically your sounds are another character in the series. You're bringing this element that's that kind of carries its own weight right alongside the actors and the visuals.
Well, we certainly like to hope so. The sound is sort of, can be an illusionary art form, in terms of like the idea with sound is not to, you don't want to be calling attention to every single thing, but you're exactly right that our job was to sort of make it feel like we're in a war torn zone, and things are, that's everything from obviously the planes and the bombing and stuff, but also buildings creaking and sort of just the debris and simple things like that add that sort of texture sonically that just again helps reinforce the story. Obviously, our main character Marie is blind, so we were able to sort of heighten some sounds, and we're sort of able to sort of just sort of be a little bit more like, I guess, louder, for lack of a better way to describe it, on certain things to do with, the stairway, like the staircase that she comes down in episode one. We made that sort of a character with the creaks, knowing that it would pay off in episode four when Van Rupel has to sort of creep up the stairs, and Marie's at the top of the landing and stuff. So yeah, I mean, the series, all across all episodes, the series has so many places and so many cool things to be able to hang sound on and motivate story and all those kind of cool things. It was really, again, like you said, for us sound artists, it was really it's really a great playground to be in.
And you're working, as you just mentioned, with one primary blind performer in Aria Miogo-Berti, and
Yeah.
also with the younger version of her, Nell Sutton. Um, they say that after, one sense disappears, other sentences are enhanced, probably including sound and taste and smell and all that. And wondering how does that manifest for them on this shoot? I mean, I know that you're, again, doing most of your stuff in post, but did that impact what you did as a sound
Oh,
professional?
oh, Ray, for sure, 100%. It was, the first episode establishing the characters, and just even as simple as the walking stick or the walking cane, sort of to have the sort of right tempo to it. I know, Sean, we went through a couple of different iterations of like what would a cane like that sound like back in the 40s, and what were the materials made out of, and how does it sound against cobblestone versus, a regular flooring versus a wood floor in a house. And those are small details that a lot of people don't you'd be like, really, you spend that much time thinking about what a cane would sound like? But at the end of the day, those are sort of like, when you add all those little things up, that's what makes a soundscape, the soundscape that they can be, all the rich detail. Being blind, we were able to lean into sounds a little bit, a little bit heavier, a little bit louder, and a little bit more focused on certain things. The maximum payoff of that is in episode four, where not only, she's, Marie's obviously no sight, but then, there's a bomb that blows the door off, and then we take away all her hearing, and basically her hearing, like, she doesn't have any hearing left. And the idea there was sort of like, how quiet can we make it, um, so that dramatically we have her holding a gun with a single bullet in it. She has no sight, she has no hearing, and she somehow has to zone into the fact that Van Rupel is coming up the stairs, and slowly, like, how is she going to defend herself, sort of idea. So, using sound, or lack thereof, like taking the sounds away and slowly peeling things away to make it right down to the final little shot of one footstep hitting floorboard with a little bit of glass. That was her cue, and then we're back into sort of, she knows exactly where he is, and she can fire the gun, and sort of like, get through that little section. It was just, again, using sounds that to drive that sort of story and narrative was it was sort of imperative to the story to figure that sort of section out.
It's just fascinating the way you describe that too, Craig. I mean, you clearly were the right guy to hire for this project because, you describe it. It's fascinating. Just the idea that, basically, as you say, the silences even have kind of a distinctive sound here, and that's such a credit to you and the sound team.
Yeah.
Which I know sounds a little bit odd, that silences would have its
Oh,
sound, but
it really is. We live in a noisy world. We live in a world of sound bites and quick video bites and stuff. And it's Sean, it's Dean, it's myself, it's my team, it's the way it's structured. All those things come together, and a lot of it is like the what ifs, right? Like, you get a track to a level, and then you're like, okay, now what if we did this? What if we did that? And that's the great thing about working with Sean and Dean, and in post-production, being able to explore ideas and all those sort of things. They give me the room to sort of do those things, and then it just levels itself up. And silence is it, man. Like, you can't have a loud sound, an apparent loud sound, if you don't have some sort of quiet before it. It's dynamics. It's pretty simple dynamics when you really break it down. But I think a lot of, when you have a show that comes along that you can lean into that sort of thing, it's can be really, really effective.
now, I know that you again did this mostly in post, but the Yeah, I know that this was obviously a production that had locations far away from LA and Budapest and France. Uh,
Yeah.
did those were there distinctive sounds in those areas different from what we're used to in cities in the United States?
Yeah, our production recorders did capture a few things for us. You know, he did some of the cars and some of the Nazi vehicles, the German vehicles and stuff, that give us sort of a sense of that. The research that myself and my team did was one of the biggest things was like how to get Saint-Malo to feel like that area. Obviously, it's surrounded by water and the waves crashing against the walls was a sort of big thing, you know, and then the other things were the bells. Like there's a church bell that would go off every little while, and although we didn't use it a lot in the series, it gave me an idea of like how to do a little bit more research into terms of what the seagulls would sound like versus what seagulls sound like in North America, and any sort of like atmospheres like that. You know, we were able to sort of like just build it out that way on top of like using sound appropriate German tanks, German guns, and the B-24 bombers. Like, you know, so all those things together, I think added into sort of a right layer of like, oh, that feels correct, you know. Loop Group, Ryan Cole, our dialect supervisor, did a great job with Loop Group and got, you know, the right languages and the right dialect for the different languages of French and German and all those sort of things. So again, it's like it's being focused on what you're trying to add versus just trying to cover it with all sorts of things. So, you know, the right seagull sound in the right spot sells beach a lot easier than just laying seagulls in all the way through, you know? So it's that kind of, you know, it's that kind of like artistry that sort of comes into the craft, you know?
Were any of the sound cues written right into the script? I mean, does it say, you know, like
I
tank
think, you know,
here?
yeah, it would have been, you know, stuff like the bombers, you know, like when the bombing
Uh,
comes, and even for the first shot, that whole first, you know, section of the first episode was described incredibly well in the script and in the book, you know, but it definitely in the script it was fleshed out, you know, and that was one of the first ones that Sean asked me to sort of like, could you come up with a sort of a soundscape of like, you know, hearing the B-24s coming in and then the bombing starting with distant bombing and then it would build and build and build and then it dissipates, and then we go to complete quiet and then you just see, you know, then you see all the pamphlets sort of coming down, raining down quietly. That was a soundscape that I sort of did really early on that again set sort of the tone, really, you know, set sort of the footprint of what we were going to do sonically. Yeah.
I love that what you're doing sonically here also is a lot of times, as we sort of touched on, uh, done from the perspective of people that can't see,
Yes. Yeah.
and how that, you know, and how they hear differently than the rest of us, and maybe more sensitively and just are more attuned to
Yeah.
what's around them. And
Yeah.
you can really feel that when you're watching this, Craig, that
Thank you.
you feel, if you close your eyes, that you would almost put yourself in their shoes.
That the gentleness of that is something that's very kind of you to say because that's kind of what, again, that's what we strive for, is that sort of believability ultimately, you know, and so that you could close your eyes and a soundscape can actually, you know, take you into that world. And I think some of the best shows and best films that are out in the world, you know, you can sort of do that, you know, and you know, and then you add in a fantastic score that James did that's got the delicate piano and all these sort of like delicate things. You know, you have room to sort of explore the loud bombing and go right down to as quiet you can actually be. And that is, again, that was something that, you know, we kind of hit upon early on and we're able to sort of use it when we really needed to. And that first opening scene sort of is a perfect example of that idea of going crazy loud with big music, big bombing, and then where's this going to go? Where's this going to go? And it goes into this gentle opening, and then the credit sequence starts. You know, it's such an elegant way. And I just give credit to Sean and Dean that they, you know, he shot it that way, and then they crafted it that way so sound can kind of like tailor all those sort of things. Yeah.
As a sound guy, do you actually, when you're in post, do you sometimes close your eyes and does that help you actually
Yeah,
physically closing your eyes?
absolutely. Yeah. Quite often I'll just shut all the computer screens off and the video screen off and just sort of make things, one of my one of the things that sort of got me into sound in the first place was years ago was soundscapes. And interestingly enough, soundscapes from fuck man, like Pink Floyd records, where you'd hear the factory sounds, or the Beatle records, or for me it would have been like Riders on the Storm with Jim Morrison, where the beginning of that with the rain and the thunder. I know it's a little nugget, but those sort of things really, when I got into sound and was in school learning about it and crafting my first soundtracks, it was never really about hear a dog, see a dog. It was always about what can sound do creatively to speak to the emotion and sort of the sort of like storytelling, the story side of it. And so I've always, you always got to put yourself in sort of the seat of the audience, sort of hearing it for the first time, experiencing it for the first time. So it's interesting that you mentioned that, because yeah, you take all those sort of ideas and distill it into what you can present, and quite often, it's a bit of an illusionary sound thing that we do with sound. So you kind of want to, you kind of just want to be supportive when you need to and push when you don't need to, and sort of be around all sorts of different ideas all the time. And soundscapes are a huge thing for me. Yeah.
It's such a fascinating craft because it it may be something, and don't take this the wrong way, it's something we take for granted when we're watching a project.
Oh,
But
dude,
boy,
100%. Oh, 100%, and that's, ultimately that, look, you think of the world and you think of being on set. When you go on set on a shoot, there's like what, 300 people, maybe that's exaggeration, making sure that this image is perfect, right? Production design, camera, lighting, you name it, focus, all of it. And then you look over to the sound people, and there's like maybe two or three people that are like the boom person and then the sound person. And so if you extrapolate that into everyday life, the majority of people in the world are visually oriented. They're not sonically oriented. Well, I'm one of the few that's sort of sound oriented. And so if you look at it that way, it's pretty obvious that sound is an art form that leads so much to everything you experience visually that it kind of gets taken for granted. Take it away. Do it one time. Take the sound away from a gigantic action sequence or something, and then tell me how you feel. Because those explosions and that, car chase, or like, even the quietest scenes, some of the quieter movies that I've done, take all that sound away, and it's more than 50% of the experience, is what the cliche term, you know what I mean? But it really truly is, man. Like
oh,
it's some,
it would totally gut the experience. I mean, gut the excitement if you take
yeah.
when you take the sound or mute or muffle the sound.
Muffle the
Uh,
sound, or don't get it right, even, if you don't, I mean, that's the first thing, especially for like smaller films or independent movies. If your sound is as good as it can be, it can kind of allow you to get away with maybe stuff that's maybe not quite perfectly, done visually. But again, sound can only, we can only do so much as long as the visuals are there and the story's there and sound
yeah.
is there. That's when they both, that's the true art form, is when they both kind of come together and really elevate the whole experience.
How did doing sound? We're going to wrap here in a second, Craig. How did doing sound on all the light we cannot see differ from what you've done on, say, Stranger Things or on Roma, for which you were nominated for an Oscar?
Oh yeah, I mean, stranger, you look at, for me, the fun stuff was being able to flex a lot of different muscles, sonic muscles, so to speak, in all the light. You have the fun stuff of, planes and bombing and World War II and all the sort of mechanical sounds that, you know, the world back then was a mechanical place. It was like a noisy place in terms of interesting sounds. Um, you know, the informative stuff of like working on something like Stranger Things and then something like Roma is sort of the sensitivity to dynamics and the sensitivity to focus, and like making sure that the sounds that you're trying to do, or the soundscape you're creating, has a point of view and has sort of an idea of like where things need to go and where things need to pay off. And I mean, it all feeds upon itself, right? You know, like the stuff I do in Roma informs stuff that I would do in Stranger Things, vice versa. And All the Light was just one of those ones where, because working with Sean and Dean for so long, there's this shorthand of like, you know, able to sort of like experiment and try things out and not feel like I can't fail, you know, like I can try a few oddball things perhaps, and maybe it leads to another discussion. And that's something that you try to apply to every project, because then it feeds upon itself. But yeah, All the Light was a very special project from all sorts of different points of view. You know, but the soundscape, creating that soundscape was sort of a really proud moment when we finished the last episode and knew that we created something that across all 4 episodes is a style and fits perfectly with what the story and what we're seeing on screen is. Yeah.
You were just a fascinating guy. This was just a wonderful conversation, and I am
Thank
thrilled
you.
to have had you. We're going to have to leave things there, but
Okay.
all 4 installments of All the White We Cannot See are streaming on Netflix. Craig Henighan, best of luck this Emmy season and every season, and thanks for joining us today at Gold Derby.
Appreciate it, Ray. Thank you for taking the time. Thanks, everyone.